Okay, so buenos dias. Hello, good morning. We're going to have the equipo Hernández up here talking about what they're doing in their program. They'll give you an activity, they'll discuss it, and then in the afternoon, we're going to take it apart and discuss it and apply it and think more deeply into it, okay? And I kind of liked it. I thought it worked pretty well. It was well integrated, and it seemed like people got a lot out of it, so we'll just do the same thing today. Maria, why don't you come on up here and talk a little bit about how to think about what they're going to listen to.
Yesterday we focused on a lot of general best practices. Today we're going to focus more narrowly on best practices related to HL teaching. So in HL teaching, of course, has best practices, but it also takes from general best teaching practices and best language teaching practices, right? So today on page 8, we'll start looking, not yet, but this is what we're going to be working with, the best teaching practices specifically related to HL. Before we do that, we're going to have an exercise, a review exercise. So the first thing I'm going to ask you when we come back together in the afternoon is to think about the best general practices we reviewed yesterday, we talked about yesterday. And again, think about what best practices you observed in their presentation. So the first exercise, I'm going to ask you to go back and look at best practices. It's C, I don't remember what page. C starts on page 4 of the handout. Remember, we went over the start talk practices. So I'm going to ask you to think about what you observe that corresponds with these best practices. And then after that, we'll move to best HL practices. Okay? And then at the end, we're going to do the same thing we did yesterday. You're going to produce, at the very end of the day, you're going to produce a guide to what you think is what the best steps are if you want to create and adapt materials. So you can start thinking about what you're hearing today and what you've done yourself that works well in that regard.
Pues, bienvenidos, bienvenidas. Segundo día, ¿no? It's the second day. So I don't know about you, but yesterday I was very glad when I left because I left with a lot of information, a lot of very good vibes from the crowd. A while back, Claudia mentioned something, which was. Well, maybe next year we'll be looking at what you guys created, and we laughed. But a couple of years ago, Nina and I were in the crowd listening to Claudia and to Maria, and now we're up here presenting what we created. I do want to encourage you to think about following up with the workshop and sharing what you guys create, because it's beneficial for the whole community, for the whole SHL community, and beyond the SHL community. So just think about that, please. We titled our presentation, Creating Thematic Units for Developing Writing and Critical Awareness in Heritage Spanish Courses. So we've been hearing a lot of information about best practices, about the 5 C's. And we've also been hearing about creative writing, creative awareness in SHL, in Spanish Heritage Learning. And so we want to show you what we did regarding writing and critical awareness in our own classroom. And so we'll be telling you a little bit about our own experience, our own classroom, our own programs, our own students. And I hope that you guys can look at what we did and think about what Maria and Claudia presented yesterday, because that's where we are also, that's what led us to do what we're doing now, what we're presenting now.
This is the handout that will be used in thematic units for developing writing and critical awareness in Heritage Spanish courses.
We're going to be showing you something that's called Reflexiones. That's the way that we title these units that we will be presenting. And the Reflexiones units are thematic units, so they revolve around a specific topic, a specific theme. And I'm going to tell you a little bit about the Reflexiones in a minute. We had a lot of questions before we started doing our units, our Reflexiones. we asked ourselves several questions. I mean, these are just some of the questions that we had, not all of the questions, but we asked ourselves, well, who are our students? What type of students that we have? And so that led us to think about our own program, our own university, and some of the needs of our students. So let me tell you a little bit about our students. We are in a medium-sized university. We have a major and a minor in Spanish, and we also have an MA in Spanish. And about 89%, 90% of our students are Latinos, most of them Mexican Americans. And so we have in our program, we have a second language, a Spanish second language program, and we also have a heritage program. But because we have a very high percentage of Latinos, a very high number of Latinos, what we do in our heritage program is that we have Latino students in the intermediate level, but also at the beginning level. Okay, so we try to separate heritage students at the beginning level and at the intermediate level. So I would say that the intermediate level, the 2000 level courses, we have, thinking about what Maria was presenting yesterday, I would say that our students are in the intermediate high, advanced low stage. And then the heritage students in the beginning level would be maybe about the beginning high, intermediate low, intermediate, more or less. So the students that we will be talking about have a lot of competence in Spanish, or some competence in Spanish, while the ones in the beginning courses would be what we would call receptive bilinguals. They have some knowledge of Spanish, but they're better at understanding the listening comprehension, but not necessarily a lot of competence. Okay, so we do separate because we have such a high number of Latinos, Mexican American students. We try to separate them. Okay, so those are our students. Many of them are second generation students. Some of them are one and a half generation. That is, they might have been born in Mexico, have some experience in Mexico or some other country, but they mostly grew up in the U.S. But then we also have third, fourth, and sometimes fifth generation students in our classroom. Okay, because we right by the border, our university is right by the border, and so we have this big diversity in our Latino population. Okay. The other thing is, the other question that we asked ourselves is, well, what do we want them to learn? What do we want them to learn? And we asked ourselves that because we are two instructors in a much bigger program. So, I mean, we are working with SHL students, but there are other people that are also working with SHLs, with SHLs meaning Spanish heritage learners, right? And so what do we want them to learn? And more important, I think that we should have also said, well, what do they want to learn? At the beginning of every course, I ask my students what they want to learn. I give them a small survey, and then the first reflection that we will be talking about is a reflection where they tell us what they're expecting from the course. What are some of the things that they want to learn in the course? So that we not only focus on what we want them to learn, but what they also are expecting from the course. Okay, and not everything that they say in their first reflection is going to be positive, by the way. Okay, so expect that, because a lot of them will be saying something like, I want to learn the correct way to speak Spanish. Quiero hablar bien español. Or many of them will say, quiero aprender a hablar español, because they will talk to me after class and they will say, yo no sé hablar español. Okay, so keep in mind that, but this is something that we want to know so that we can work on that, right? Maybe bringing up their self-esteem or their linguistic security, etc. Okay, some of the things that Claudia was talking about yesterday is that Maria was also mentioning yesterday.
Is that they want to learn the rules for the accents. So that's also very common. Because they already know Spanish, but they want to learn more about the accents.
Yes, so accents is a big thing for them. So we give them some of that. I mean, we'll give them some of that. But then I tell them, I have students in my master's program that sometimes are struggling with accents as well. So, but anyway, But we try to work with that as well. I mean, because they want that, no? They need that, and it's a matter of security for them as well. And the other question that we asked ourselves, what do they know already? What do they know already? Because I was talking to some of you yesterday, especially some of you that are working with second language students. And our second language, a typical second language student in an American university might be coming with very little knowledge of the target language, right? Even though I think that in our university that it's not really the case. Even a second language student will bring something to our classroom. Okay, so they're not coming in, no vienen tabla rasa. I mean, they're not coming in blank from the high school or even from home. They're bringing in something to the classroom. Everybody, or most everybody, brings something to the classroom. In heritage courses, in Spanish heritage courses, we know that our typical student will bring in knowledge about the present, for example. Most of them will know how to conversate with the present. We know that many of them will have basic home vocabulary, and so we try to identify points. And this is something that I picked up from Maria last year. And we try to identify points where they might be struggling, or where we know that they might be struggling. And I have a background in linguistics, obviously in sociolinguistics, and I know a little bit about the literature about Spanish in the U.S. So I do pick up a lot of from that. For example, I know that the literature about Spanish in the U.S. says that bilinguals in the U.S. might struggle a little bit more than a monolingual with the subjunctive, right? The big subjunctive. And so we also we try to work with that. I mean, so we'll have at some point we'll have a grammatical in the grammar we'll focus on the subjunctive. At some point we'll focus maybe on Maria was talking about yesterday about hypotheticals. ¿Qué harías tú si pudieras, si ganaras la lotería? We try to be aware that there will be more than one option for a lot of these things that I am talking about. I'm not that prescriptive. I know that a student can say trabajaría, trabajaba, trabajara, etc. So I try to acknowledge that. We try to acknowledge that. So we know that they're bringing a lot from home already, as far as vocabulary, as far as grammar, and also as far as culture, right? So they're bringing in a lot of cultural baggage, good, but they're also bringing in some of the myths that Claudia was talking about from home, from our society. And so we also try to address that. We've made the decision that we will focus on vocabulary, we will focus on the grammar, but we will also focus on trying to dispel some of the myths that Claudia was talking about, trying to empower them through the Reflexiones and through other means, trying to create this awareness about how language works in our society, etc. Okay, things that we will be talking about later on. So the other thing that we asked ourselves is, what are our options now? So we had to think about what we had already, but where are our options at the moment? We had 2 books, and the 2 books that we had at the moment were grammar books. I mean, so we would open the grammar book, and then we would have yo, blank, correr, right? I mean, I'm exaggerating, but that was basically it. I mean, we had 2 grammar books like that. One that focused mainly on vocabulary and in spelling, and the other one that was focused mainly on grammar. I mean, and that's good, right? I mean, that can be good, but we try to embed that in what we are going to show you in the Reflexiones themselves. So the grammar and the vocabulary we hope would be built up through the writing that they're going to do. And not only that, but the writings we decided that the writings were going to be about topics that they may not be able to talk about or write about in other courses. Mm-hmm. For many of them, that would be the first opportunity to write about their identity, their family history, etc. Okay, so we will show you some of the topics later on. Bueno, estábamos hablando de las opciones, the options that we have now. And we talked a little bit about what other colleagues might do in the same position, what is it that we wanted, and what is it that our students want, right? And then also, is there a book or a text that can help us achieve our goals? And there might be a text, tal vez haya un texto, pero una de las metas que teníamos nosotros, one of the things that we wanted to do for that particular academic year, the academic year that we passed, is that we wanted to rely less and less on the books available, and then we wanted to create our own material. We wanted to create our material for our students, and that, we come from a university where a lot of our students struggled to buy books, and then the books that we had available were not really, we didn't really convince us at all. Not that there are now good books out there. There might be good books out there. We just wanted we wanted to create material for our own students, right? And so we started looking at what people have said about the needs of Spanish heritage learners, and we began by recognizing that heritage learners have different needs than students in the second language courses, right? And so we started looking at what other people said, and we went to Valdez, and not only Valdez, but other people that have talked about what are the needs of Spanish heritage learners. And for example, Valdez talked about fomentar el mantenimiento del español, so students are coming into the classroom. A lot of them might not. We try to create a positive image of the language so that they make this commitment to maintain the language. This would be a lifelong commitment in a way, right? Ganar una variedad académica. This might be controversial for some of us, but mainly it means that we want them to acquire a traditional grammar. I don't know how you guys want to call it. At least be aware that there are other ways of communicating what they might already know how to communicate, not in a very formal way, right? So, ganar una variedad académica, incrementar el espectro bilingüe. So if they're coming in a beginning low level, then we want them to go into a mid-high level, etc. Trasladar destrezas de escrituras del inglés al español, because they're not only coming with a lot of knowledge in Spanish, but some of them have already went through a lot of courses in English, right? So many of them have not been in a classroom where they've studied their heritage language formally, but they have access to writing, reading, grammar in English, a lot for some of them. The typical student in a 2000 level course in our university has already gone through a composition course or 2 composition courses in English at some point. So we want to also work with what they bring from those courses. Impulsar el potencial académico, so not only think about the Spanish courses, but also what are some of the connections that they can make with other courses. And Maria, for example, last year presented a project-based course, which really got us thinking about, well, what are some of the connections that we can do in our own university, in our own program? And so we try to maximize this potential, this academic potential that they bring, right? So some of you were talking about yesterday about their students, especially Latino students coming in with a lot of extra burden than a typical student in a university would come in. So we do a lot of that as well in our own program, in our university. Promover actitudes positivas hacia el español y la cultura de herencia. And then we also added Aparicio, desarrollo de la conciencia cultural, auto, intra, and intercultural. And then we would also have to add what Claudia was talking about yesterday, this critical awareness. That should also be there. So we would put Claudia and some other people there. That should be their part. Okay. So what were some of our goals in this Reflexiones? Well, there was a focus of writing. This is part of our focus on the 4 basic skills. We try to emphasize the idea of writing as a process as much as possible, because as you will see, the Reflexiones are very special in a way. Writing as a process might involve a lot of sharing among themselves, and there's some sharing with Reflexiones, but they were semi-formal and they were more or less written for the instructor, for the peers, but they were talking about very personal matters. So I didn't really ask them, for example, to do peer editing, because some of them might not be comfortable sharing what they were writing for me. They did share, but there were some conditions on the sharing. I'll tell you a little bit about it, and Nina might tell you a little bit about that as well. So there's an emphasis, the idea of writing as a process, previous individual and group discussion of topics, so there's also that. There's this interpersonal communication, obviously, thought of as a semi-formal exercise with self and peers as the public. So the public was their peers and their instructor. There's a focus on particular orthographic and grammatical points. So for every reflexión, there was 2 or 3 grammatical points. That was it. We weren't really, when we gave them back the reflexión, we didn't mark a lot of red things that they were doing wrong. We were focusing on specific forms that we wanted them to be aware of, right? And we obviously didn't mark anything that we hadn't introduced in the classroom. Centered on specific social and affective points relevant to Spanish heritage learners, and intended to promote a sense of classroom community. So this was very important to me. So I wanted them to know each other. I wanted them to feel part of a community, and then also make connections with the community at large. So the classroom, and then the community at large, and their position in that community, right? So the Latino community and beyond as well. And then designed to foster a critical awareness in Spanish heritage learners. So what were the topics of the Reflexiones? We have two heritage courses, right? Two heritage courses. Well, so the first one is, the first semester is 2313 and 2315. Students in 2313 will continue in 2315. And remember that we also had the other courses for beginners high. So those would be a different path. Okay, so the topics. The first, reflexión número 1, para comenzar. And here is where I asked them, well, what do you expect from the course? What do you want to learn? What do you want me to... And this is available in the website, by the way. Okay, yes, all this is available on the website. Sí, para comenzar. So this is where they wrote, where we began talking, and then eventually they wrote about their expectations for the course, what they were bringing to the course, and what they expected to leave the course with. Okay. Reflexión número 2, la historia de mi familia en los Estados Unidos. So this is where they would talk about their family, themselves, who was the first generation in the U.S., how far can they trace their roots in the U.S. or their home country, etc. Sobre mi camino a la universidad. So these are where they would talk about how they got to the university, what are some of the struggles that they had, what is the importance of a university studies. La reflexión número 4 es sobre cómo contradigo todos los estereotipos. ¿De qué se trata eso? Se trata de muchas de algunas de las cosas que Claudia estaba ayer mencionando. Entonces empezamos a hablar sobre mitos acerca de específicos grupos específicos, obviamente sobre los hispanos, latinos en los Estados Unidos, y cuál es el propósito del estereotipo, qué propósito sirve el estereotipo, etcétera, ¿no? Y luego al final un poco sobre mi futuro, o sea, cómo se ven ellos en el futuro. Y cada uno de estos obviamente tiene diferentes puntos gramaticales, formas verbales, etcétera, que ellos van a ir desarrollando. ¿Okay? Y esa es la clase de 2313. Y las reflexiones que nosotros hicimos este año pasado fueron para la clase de 2313. Hicimos reflexiones para la clase de 2315, pero no las hemos utilizado todavía. We haven't piloted them yet. But we did pilot the ones for 2313, which are the ones that Nina taught a course in spring and I taught a course in the fall. So for 2315, we had 5 reflexiones, and we have para comenzar again. I mean, even if they were coming back, we still wanted to know what their expectations were, what they planned to learn in the course, what they were bringing from before, etc. Algunas cosas que me identifican. And here's where we talk about language and identity. And this is what we will be presenting today, that specific unit, which we haven't piloted, by the way. Okay? And number 3, sobre el ser bilingüe. So this is where we talk about bilinguismo, myths about bilinguismo, the advantages of being bilingual, the positive side of being bilingual, what studies might say about bilingualism, etc. So we try to promote bilingualism. Sobre el proceso de aprender otra lengua, because a lot of them were coming from from another country, a different country. So they went through the process of acquiring Spanish as a second language. Some of them, especially the 1.5 generation, were coming in with this. So they had someone in the family that had acquired a second language. Their parents, their uncles, etc. Sobre el proceso de aprender otra lengua, sobre el reto de hablar español en los Estados Unidos. Okay, some of los retos de continuar el español, pensando en el mantenimiento, el desplazamiento, etc. Okay? So we did touch on a lot of sociolinguistic points here.
Está ahorita disponible en línea. If you go to the Heritage Spanish website, es esta parte, Reflexión 2. Pero nuestro propósito o nuestro proyecto es, pues, ir añadiendo poco a poco en el sitio web.
Pero lo importante también es que nosotros no les vamos a dar el material necesariamente. Nosotros les vamos a dar herramientas para que ustedes puedan crear sus propios material. Como dicen en inglés, don't give somebody a fish, teach them how to fish, ¿verdad? Entonces, eso es el propósito del workshop. Claro, vamos a compartir cosas, pero lo más importante es que ustedes pueden tomar lo que nosotros compartimos y adaptarlo a su realidad, ¿verdad? A la realidad de sus estudiantes, porque sus estudiantes no son los mismos estudiantes que los míos, seguramente, ¿verdad? Como ayer estuvimos platicando, ayer estuvimos dialogando. Entonces, para mí lo importante es, claro, tienen esa unidad y vamos a tratar de poner más, pero lo importante es que ustedes las tomen y las adapten. So, to benefit your students, for the benefit of your own students. You might want to ask your students at the beginning of the course, well, what do you want to learn from this course? What do you want to get from out of this course? And that might determine where you want to go with this, right? What we were thinking when we thought about Reflexiones, Nina and I were participating in an instructor seminar, a workshop for seminar in our own university, where we had to come up with a linguistic autobiography, and I had done that before, and so I found this in a reading that I was doing. So, reflective practices should be an essential component of language teacher courses and programs in L2 or general education unit for both TAs and undergraduate students. So, we need to reflect on our own linguistic background, right? Structured reflective practices should also address their own background as native or non-native speakers of the language that they teach, personal experience as language learners, experience with different kinds of teaching, attitudes of preferences concerning pedagogical or curricular options, views about communities, the heritage language that is used, and so on. So, lo más importante aquí es que antes de empezar el curso, nosotros reflexionamos en nuestra propia experiencia y queríamos saber sobre la propia experiencia de nuestros estudiantes y lo íbamos a lograr a través de las reflexiones. O sea, los íbamos a conocer muy bien como personas, como estudiantes, como parte de nuestra comunidad. Y Claudia también ayer mencionó bastante acerca de Freire y de otros. De ahí viene toda esta idea también. And then why introduce a critical awareness approach in the Heritage Spanish classroom? We had this from Parra. Many heritage learners bring into the classroom important feelings of stigmatization about the way they speak. Claudia was talking about this yesterday. Would challenge not only the use of their language, but also their sense of identity in relation to the American and country of origin mainstream cultures. So we wanted to work on this as well. So we wanted them to feel good about the type of Spanish that they bring into the classroom. We wanted to add to that if possible. We wanted them to have a good sense of identity of who they were. Especially with everything that is going on at the national level, we wanted to work on a lot of those feelings that on the affective, Maria yesterday mentioned the affective component, so we wanted to work a lot on that affective component for students. And how can critical awareness empower students? So we did ask ourselves this, and we found this from Parra again. So the purpose of our profession comprises engaging students in deep reflection to raise critical awareness around important and sensitive issues such as language ideologies, and the power structures that have shaped the students' beliefs about their own languages, cultures, and identities. The ultimate goal of teaching heritage language is to empower students' ethno-linguistic identity as part of their lives in the United States and as part of their global citizenships.
Este es el modelo de la unidad que tenemos y está también aquí en el handout. es la organización como lo tenemos y como está disponible en el sitio de Heritage Spanish. Y vamos a ir hablando un poco sobre esto, pero también a la vez queremos que vayan pensando en esto, cómo lo podrían usar en sus clases. Depende la institución donde estén, depende de los estudiantes, porque nuestro propósito es después, explicamos este ejemplo y después tratar de ver si pueden trabajar ya sea individual o en grupos y pensar en los temas que pueden presentar para sus clases, qué puntos se pueden usar de esos temas o qué actividades se pueden hacer sobre esos temas. Entonces, así como vaya hablando de esto, también piensen un poco en cómo lo podrían adaptar para sus cursos. Sí, este es el ejemplo, pero para nuestros cursos, tal vez le cambiamos algo, lo adaptamos, porque, por ejemplo, en el otoño, él lo enseñó un curso, pero era presencial, pero yo después lo tuve que enseñar en la primavera online. Entonces, tratamos de usar este material, pero en diferentes formatos, ¿no?
And the best thing about this is that we're not really forcing the students to write in Spanish. We're giving them the option, because they also have the option to use English if they want to in the Reflexiones, or a combination of English and Spanish. I mean, it's up to them. A lot of them are coming in with a very negative idea about this use of code switching in the writing, so they tend to stand away from it even when they have the option. But if they wanted to, they could, because that was part of the instruction. Most of them did not choose to use this code switching in their writing. The thing is that with these topics, like Claudia was saying, we're talking about topics that some of them might be at the beginning very, very uncomfortable to talk about. It's not the same level of anxiety that the second language students would experience. Our heritage learners are coming in with a different experience than maybe a second language learner. And so we do have to acknowledge that in the classroom, subjects that might not be very comfortable for some of them, and we have to encourage them to talk about this. That's what we try to do. And then remember that we're working with the students at the 2000 level. I'm sure that in the 1000 level, if we give them the choice, they would take the opportunity much more than the students at this level. And then the other thing is that we're asking them. We're yesterday thinking about the proficiency levels that Maria was talking about. I mean, we're asking them to talk about topics that might be more in the advanced high. So these advanced intermediate high. So these students are there. Maybe I would try a different approach with the 1000 level students, and then we might expect more English code switching there. I'm just assuming, I don't know. But the opportunity is there. And like I said, most of our students do not take the opportunity, by the way, which is in itself interesting. Perhaps if I was working with the 1000 level courses, I might do that. But what I've read, I mean, there are some studies on these, and most of the studies point out to a positive outcome in letting students do this, by the way. And then what I've read in the and I don't remember the name of the authors at the moment, but what I read is that a lot of them allow them to do these English-Spanish code switching or code mixing, depending, and then they ask them to do the translation in Spanish, yes, eventually. But it all depends on you as an instructor. We shouldn't think in terms of they don't know the word. I mean, like Claudia was saying yesterday, maybe this is part of an identity. Because, for example, my just thinking about my own family, my nephew calling me tío all the way. What do you want, tío? It's not that he doesn't know the word uncle in English, or mi granny. It's not that our students don't know the word for granny in English, it's just that that's what they're comfortable with. I mean, that's part of an identity. That's something that there might be an affective or some type of connection there that they're trying to make that might not be the same type of connection for them if they use a different language. Remember that we're bilinguals and that we have two languages at our disposition. So, but at some point in our Reflexiones, there is a section on préstamos. And so that's where Bachatería comes in. So I mean, we already know, ya sabemos cómo decir bachatería. ¿Cuáles son otras maneras de decir bachatería? So you don't have to, but what I would do is on one of the reflections, and I don't remember which one, there is a section on préstamos. Mm-hmm. There's also one on cognados verdaderos, cognados falsos, préstamos. So, I mean, if you're going to do this, then there has to be a section where you address it. We have a chance to use synonyms, true cognates, false cognates, loan words, variation like Claudia was mentioning yesterday. So I always, even with the second language learners, okay, el libro, lleva las gafas. Okay, so does anybody know another word for gafas? I mean, lentes. So you probably, I tell them, you probably won't hear gafas around here. You'll hear lentes, you'll hear anteojos. Hmm? Does anybody know another word for coche? Carro. So yeah, we have to do that. In the fall semester, we attended a series of workshops at our university called Multilingual Pedagogies, and then in the spring we attended another one called Translanguaging. And so this was coming from the English department, where they were trying this multilingual and translanguaging in their own classrooms with these Latino students, bilingual students. So they were allowing the use of some Spanish code switching in their own composition courses. So